Hello, Xyy'nai of planet Earth. This is Xyy'nai, and this episode is about the special powers of the Xyy'nai Mojo. The best way to understand your special powers as a Xyy'nai is to understand yourself as in the RPG style, as a magical creature with special abilities, so that you have alien energetics, and that the SS index acts as a default baseline human. So your true self may be different from what you think of yourself because of your innate self with your innate powers because of life experiences. It may feel like mutant powers are unlocking in you, but these are your innate powers that are unlocking, and these are the powers you were meant to have. These are you. Your way as a Xyy'nai is very complex but very rewarding. So there will be lots of range of personal experience and abilities and life paths within the Xyy'nai Mojo, but they all share those innate powers that power them and that lead them to their next levels. So let's get into these powers and how they work. So every human has 8 powers of the psyche, with 4 of them being conscious and 4 of them unconscious. And the conscious powers can be accessed directly and manifest themselves physiologically in ways that can be read by others who are trained in Mojo reading. So each of the 4 conscious powers has its own character, which has evolved to make it at its job. So many RPG games, you have that concept of the multi-class character, where you have several character classes with different rankings. So for Mojos, there are 4 character classes with a hierarchical order that doesn't change. So the character classes are variations on Pilot, Hunter, Gatherer, and Tower. And more specifically, you as a Xyy'nai are a Passion Pilot, a Truth Hunter, a Real World Gatherer, and a Logic Tower. Now let's go deeper into your conscious power, starting with your first power and then going down the hierarchy. So we'll start with your first power, the power of Xy. Xy is your first power or source power. Xy is a pilot power, and Xyy'nai are energized primarily by piloting using impassioned persuasion. So the source power character class of the Xyy'nai is that of Passion Pilot. The color for Xy is color-coded as red, so thus the phenomena that you're seeing here in the video. And the energy infusion, the energy signals that emanate from that power of Xy, is the spirit of caring. The fact that you have Xy as your source or first ranked power, and the fact that it's infused or compounded with its second power, the second power, which is Nai, gives you specific abilities and powers. So powers that Xy will give you is sense of community and personal connection, social awareness and personal consideration, integrity and conduct, tribal relationships and cultural dynamics, interpersonal relationships and group dynamics, etiquette and diplomacy, team building and shepherding, rituals and collective values, charm and persuasion, and human relationships and dynamics. These abilities that you have with your Xy will also be emanating from you, and when you interact with different social bubbles within your different groups, the other people will also benefit from that energy, that Xy, and those powers that you have. So it will be extended into your social bubble at large. So in general, the other Xy Mojos, they'll be augmented by your power of Xy, so there'll be an augmentation relationship there. The Xy Mojos, they will be inspired by your powers of Xy because they have the Xy and the Xy have that inspirational relationship. With the Xyy'nai, because it's the high other or the ideal inspirational for the Xyy'nai, so the Xyy'nai will be the most inspired. And because you have the source power of Xy and it's combined with Nai, that gives you a special ability to see things in terms of epic stories. So being able to see the story of yourself, your human dynamics, social dynamics, and then understand it in terms of past, present, future with the Nai, the epic story. Because Xi is higher up on the SS index, it's on the 5th position down, there will be this relationship with the environment because the environment will generally calls for more of the concrete, so the ones that are lower in the SS index, the ones that are more concrete, more concretely actionable. And so since the Xi is higher up on the SS index, it seems like magic when it's pulled off. It's magic bonus when you're able to pull it off, but you will have environmental penalties to pull off maneuvers because those are using the Xi is not as readily visible or acknowledgeable by the environment. And so until you can pull those moves off, you may be incurring penalties to do so. Because you have Xi, code of conduct is going to be a very important element for you. So having a good code of conduct, having it thought out and acting on that code of conduct and holding others within the tribe to that code of conduct of what's right and what's wrong, you know, within a social context. That will be very important for you to develop your code of conduct based on what you see are like the best practices, and then to engage social dynamics in that way and hold the social dynamics to that code of conduct. Also, another important element that Xi will give you is persuasive speech. So because Xi is engaging with those social dynamics, connecting with the audience and moving them in certain ways, that gives you an innate power to be able to articulate, one, because Xi is all about articulation, and also to persuade, to move those dynamics. Now, you know, that's a great power, and can be used for many great good things, like you know, advocating for people, like, you know, convincing people that they need to you know, go elsewhere that is going to be more beneficial for them, all these kinds of things, you know, I mean, that you'd be able to do with the ability of persuasive speech. You just have to watch out for using it for the noble purposes. Next up we have Xyy'nai. Now Xyy'nai is your second or tandem power. Xyy'nai is a hunter power, so Xyy'nai momentum is supplemented by hunting for the truth with the power of Xyy'nai. The tandem power character class of the Xyy'nai is that of Truth Hunter. So the color code of Xyy'nai is blue, thus that's you see here the synonyma that you're in this video, with the red first, the Xi, and then the blue is the second most color represented. The energy infusion and the signal that it emanates is dissatisfaction of spirit, and the powers that this gives you, and of course it's within the context of the fact that this is your tandem or second ranked power, and it's combined with your source ranked power of Xi. These powers that it will give you are detachment and call to imagine, conceptualization and envisioning, synthesis and synergy, inclusiveness and perspective shifting, meaningful insight and seeing the angles, speculation and prediction, global modeling and long-range planning, sense of destiny and visionary drive, independence of mind and secrecy, and proactive theorizing and abductive reasoning. This power of Xyy'nai is going to give you abilities and is going to give signals that you're sending off and emanating into the environment. These abilities that you have are also going to permeate to your bubble, your social group around you. So the way it will affect the environment, so for other Xyy'nai mojos, you'll be augmenting them, so increasing their powers, so be an augmentation relationship there. For the Ni mojos, they'll be inspired by your Xyy'nai. There's an inspirational relationship there. And specifically, the most inspired will be the ideal inspirational, again, the Xyy'nai. And similar to Xi, because Xyy'nai is higher up in the SS index, actually it's the first position on the SS index, again, there will be a massive magic bonus when it's pulled off, but there will be environmental penalties to pull off those moves. Doesn't mean, of course, that you shouldn't be doing them, because it's your Xyy'nai are your first or source and your second ranked power or tandem. So you should be definitely using those to power all the rest of your powers, but you just need to be aware of, you know, how the environment interacts or relates to those, and the fact that, you know, the environment is going to more readily acknowledge or recognize those more concrete and concretely actionable powers. And so the ones that are higher up in the SS index, that are more tacit, you know, maybe take longer to be seen concretely as you go down your peak pathway to the more concrete powers, then, you know, you just have to be aware that during that period that you're using your first two powers, maybe the environment is not giving you the validation, and you may be taking penalties, but once you do pull those off, it's like a magic power. Something came on the board that wasn't expected, and you get massive rewards from it. With the power of Xyy'nai comes HSP, so all Xyy'nai mojos will experience HSP, which is the, you know, this anxiety, wanting to crawl out of your skin, you know, this especially when confronted with V, which is like the polar power for Xyy'nai. So this, you know, you may experience these moments where you have to, you know, feel a feeling of wanting to isolate yourself. You know, you know, you just can't be there wherever you're at, and if you're outside or whatever, it's like this, like you're being seen, you feel like you're being exposed, and it's this extreme anxiety that causes you to want to withdraw and isolate. So you may go through periods of this or moments of this in your life, and that's because your Xyy'nai is pulling on you and calling to you for some reason to go inside and to go into the simulator, the Xyy'nai simulator. Another thing about Xyy'nai is that Xyy'nai is the yinest of the directive powers. So you have Xy'nai, which is a more yin power, or like the second yinest power within the directives, and then you have Xyy'nai. So you start off with more yin powers as you start your peak pathway. Then you go to more yang powers like V and Xy. So it's kind of like you start with yin to get to yang, but that's just the part of your peak pathway and how it works, and your path, your hero's path, which is really cool. Next up in your conscious powers, you have the power of V, and now V is your third, our offside power. And V is a gatherer power, so the Xyy'nai can gather real-world resources and experiences, but it's going to be more energetically expensive to do so because it is modulation. It's going to the, so it's not momentum like the powers of Xy and the powers of Xyy'nai. V and the next power, the power of Xy here, are going to be modulation powers, so it's going to be more energetically expensive to use those. So your offside power character class for you, the Xyy'nai, is Real World Gatherer, and the color code for V is green. So the we don't use, in the Synamnia, in the video Synamnia, in the colors here, we use the first two powers, top two powers. So you'll see the red represented for the Xy and the blue represented for the Xyy'nai, and then the other two, you'll see them in the letterings, but it won't be represented in the auras that are emanated in here that you see in the Synamnia in this video. The energy infusion and also the energy that emanates out from you with the use of Vi is amped energy, and the powers that it gives to you, of course within the context that this is offside or third ranked power, and that it's compounded with the power of Xy, which makes it a unique form of V. So, but the powers that it will give you are 5 senses and sensory stimulation. alertness and environment scanning, present-mindedness and being in the moment, visceral and hyperized experience, sensual and connoisseur experience, aesthetic and ecstatic experience, kinetic energy and galvanization, zest for life and exuberance, animal magnetism and stage presence, and concrete reality and corporal reality. Your power of V will not only give you abilities, but it'll also give abilities to the groups and bubbles that you interact with. So for the other Xyy'nai V mojos, it will augment them. For the Ni Vi mojos, it will inspire them because there's an inspirational relationship there with between Xyy'nai V and Ni and Vi, with the Xyy'nai being the most inspired because again, the Xyy'nai and the Xyy'nai are ideal inspirationals, which means that they have the inspirational powers in the right ratios at each one of the powers. With the power of V being the offside or third ranked power, that means that it's going to be a modulation power. So it's going to be more costly for you to use it, so you need to use your energy points wisely when using that power. So a good way to do that is to specialize. There are certain V activities that would go along or complementary to your first power of Xi, and then your tandem power of Nai. So lining that V up with activities that are complementary to those first two powers, so that when you power up through your source and your tandem power, your second power, then it leads right into that offside. And the offside is specialized in a way that it goes along with your momentum powers. That will be the most energetically efficient, and also the best way to develop yourself and to mature your powers. So with the offside powers and the modulation powers in general, that's what we call fetishing, which is again specializing in certain activities, putting a lot of energy points into certain things that go along with your momentum powers, so that you can use those V activities or your V powers in a way that flows naturally through your natural peak pathway, and will keep, developing you and getting you stronger. The power of V, again, it will be expensive to use, but it's going to be deemed standard by most memes, both in how easy and regular the use of it should be. So just be aware of that fact that, for you it's going to be expensive to use, energetically expensive, because it is an offside power, but the memes again will recognize the use of this power and validate it more readily even than your first two powers. So there's a disconnect there, but just be aware of it, and again, always lead with your source and tandem powers when doing anything, because that's the way that you're going to be most energized, that's the way you're going to develop yourself and going to be able to pull off those cool advanced maneuvers with your first two powers in the long run and gain big bonuses from it. One thing that this unique form of V will give you is kinetic eruptions. So with your power of having the power of Xi, then to Nai, and then to V, it will give you this ability to have these eruptions of kinetic power that will allow you to do really impressive feats out in the environment. And then you have the power of Xi, and Xi is your fourth or polar power. So Xi is a tower power. Xyy'nai can deduce or calibrate, but it will be very energetically expensive to do so, because again, it's the fourth ranked or polar power, as we call it. So the polar power character class of the Xyy'nai is that of logic tower. So the color code for Xi is steel, Again, we only represent the first two powers, the momentum powers in the Synamnia for Xyy'nai, so you won't see the Xy color, the steel, represented in the Synamnia emanations of the Xyy'nai, but you will see it in letterings here when we refer to the power of Xy. So the energy infusion that it gives you and that emanates out from you when you use your Xy is unflappable. And the powers that it gives you, again, it will be in a unique form for you as a Xyy'nai, because the Xy for you is polar ranked and is also compounded, has a compound relationship with your power of V, but the abilities will be clarity and lucidity, precision and accuracy, dispassion and logical purity, diagnostics and experimentation, principle understanding and customizing, situational logic and analysis, refining and sharpening, optimizing and perfecting, calibrating and rectifying, and reactive theorizing and deductive reasoning. Because you have this power of Xy, and it's a unique form of Xy where you have the source power of Xi and then tandem of Nai and then offside of V and then your polar of Xy, this unique form of Xy, which is the fourth ranked and infused or compounded with V, you're going to be infused with this, and it's also going to emanate from you out into the environment, and it's going to this special form of inflappability that you'll get with your form of Xy will emanate to the environment and will affect it. So with the Xi mojos, the Xi Xy mojos, it's going to augment them. With the Xi Z mojos, it's going to inspire them. And then the ones that are going to be most inspired by it will be your ideal inspirational, because your special form of Xy is specially aligned with the Chinese special form of Z. The power of Xy is your polar power or fourth ranked power, and with that are going to come some special sensitivities. So you need to use your Xy in the right way, or aligned with your momentum powers, and then with what they're doing with your peak pathway. So you need to be aware of why you're using your Xy and use it in alignment with your peak pathway. And you need to be aware of certain things that will come up because it is a polar power, such as keening. So stressing your system. You'll always, with the polar power, you'll always have keening. Is just mastering the process so that you use it in flow with your peak pathway. So it's actually developing you rather than getting you into a state of stress lock where you're going to have to, like it's sort of like a breakdown, and then you have to, stop and heal yourself from that. To get yourself back to your, I guess, your factory settings, so to speak, to where you're flowing properly and energetically and developing yourself. With you having Xy as your polar power, you need to use it wisely and use it for things that go along with what your momentum powers are doing and what your peak pathway has been designed to do. So the power of Xy is the environment. It's in the scientific part of the SS index, but it's high up there. So it's still more, and because it's an amorphous unstructured type of power, and in the moment it can be hard to articulate and to recognize by the environment, but the environment can call on it a lot. The controlling of one's emotions, so be aware of the fact that the environment will validate, or the fact that one might be controlling their emotions with their Xy, and just use it wisely. A special note with the power of Xy is that of tacit logic. So Xy is a power of personal logic and works specifically for you on a personal level. So you can think of it as personal tactics. But the reason that it's tacit is because there's an all at once and in the moment nature to those personal tactics, as Xy is an adaptive reactive power. So the way that Xy is used is one where you kind of just do it, you don't have to explain, and that's why it's difficult to articulate and get across. It's something that you just have to get into, you just do it, and because of that it's an amorphous and structured kind of power, which leads us into our next special note, which is in the flow. And so in the flow we say that when we refer to Xy because it's something that you just have to jump into situationally. So depending on where you're at, you just have to get into the flow of something to actually fit it into your Xy. So depending on the situation you're in, you'll have to get into the flow and calibrate your Xy differently according to what's the circumstances or the situation is. The powers that you have as a Xyy'nai, they'll afford you what you can think of as energy points. So energy points from the source power you'll be getting the most energy points from, because that's like your inner superhero, like always going, battery source. But you'll get power energy points from each one of your powers. And you can think of these as hit points, ammo, armor, and spell points combined. So they're limited amount of points that you have. So the best thing for you to do is to determine when it's best to spend them, to conserve them, or to build upon them. And through your powers and peak pathway, you'll also be afforded development points, and you can think of these as experience points, background points, guilds or teams that will cause you to level up, go to the next level. And of course, Pod Lair, because it has the way for you to actually peak, to go to that next level, the understanding of that, it will offer you the fastest XP, abilities to get yourself to those next levels and really know what it is that you're doing, where you're trying to get at, and recognizing when it is that you're achieving that. So if you have any questions about the Xyy'nai, their powers, their abilities, go ahead and put it in the comments section of this video. And if there's any topic that you'd like to hear about, you can email it in to us at pod_lair@yahoo.com. And know yourself, grow yourself, save the world.